Hello all. Welcome to today's client webinar. I know that we have a lot of interest in today's one, so we'll get stuck in just a couple of moments. Today we are joined by Kim Thao and from Bader Philanthropy and our very own Greg Stanley. Bader has been a client of ours since about 2014, so we're very lucky to have Kim join us today to speak with us. Before I hand over to our presenters, just a few housekeeping. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so please do put your questions in there and we'll get to a Q&A at the very end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Greg and Kim.
Super. Thanks, Kleena. Good morning, good afternoon, folks. You're all very welcome to this morning's or today's webinar. I'm joining you from my basement office in Hamilton, Ontario, and I'm joined today by the wonderful Kim Thao, who is Enterprise Innovation Director, I hope that's correct, Kim, at Bader Philanthropies. So before we have a quick look at the agenda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So thank you, Greg. I'm happy to be here on this webinar and speaking about new innovations, let's say, in the platform solutions world. I have been at Bader Philanthropies for, I believe, going on 23 years. Even though I might not look like it, people think I started when I was 12 years old. That's always a funny story to say, but started as an intern and grew with the organization. And I am so happy to be in a position where I can advance the organization and help its mission grow.
Fantastic. That's some stint to be with the one organization. I know it's not all that common these days to stay with one organization for so long. That's great to hear that you started as the intern and worked your way up. That's super. I haven't been with SmartSimple that long, only 6 years. But, I swear Eric was sitting in the airport with a sign waiting for me when I stepped off the plane. As you mentioned today, we're gonna look at some of the latest and greatest uses for AI and generative AI in general. And to start with, we'll get a little bit of background around your organization before we look into the journey and how you got to where you are now and incorporating AI into your process flows. Before I think we'll get to what everybody wants to see, and that's a live demo, technology all going according to plan, of course, of SmartSimple Cloud plus AI in action within the Bader Philanthropies instance of SmartSimple. And then we'll finish up, of course, with what's next steps, looking to the future for you folks, and of course an opportunity for everybody to get involved and ask some questions of the two of us. As Kleena mentioned as well, folks, for anybody that's on the line, feel free to use the chat box, the Q&A box. They will be monitored throughout the presentation. So I think to start with, Kim, why don't you tell us a little bit about Bader Philanthropies specifically, and maybe some of the programs that the organization operates, maybe a little bit of background around how the organization came to be. I know before in the waiting room you gave me a little sneak peek, but over to you.
Okay. So Bader Philanthropies was opened in 1992. It was not always Bader Philanthropies. It was started as Helen Bader Foundation. That was his mother's name, the president's mother's name. She passed away and the organization was founded in her name. In 2015, we rebranded into Bader Philanthropies because his father then was also giving his trust into the foundation. So that then helped us become a more sustainable organization. Under Helen Daniels Bader, we were going to sunset in the year, I believe, 2020. So here we are here today, right? Which is amazing for us. And we have a lot of plans in the future. But that's how the foundation started, all in his mother's name. And we're happy to carry on the legacy for both his parents. So the family is still alive and on the board, and they're still very, very involved, which is amazing for us.
Yeah.
And we do have grant areas. We probably have we have more than this, but this is the major. We have 11 major grant areas, some being Alzheimer's and healthy aging, Jewish education, urban education, community matters, program-related investments. So we don't do just grants, but we do program-related investments. We touch upon the neighborhood engagement, the arts, and social equality. So it's a handful. I mean, those are just the major ones. There are other ones too listed, and all have budget line items for, but those are our major ones that we highlight.
Wow, that's a pretty diverse portfolio. And is it local to Milwaukee for the most part, or do you grant nationally in the US and internationally?
Yes, for the most part, most of our grant areas are funded in the county of Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee. We do have one grant area, Alzheimer's and healthy aging, which is a statewide endeavor. And then we have international programs that fund in the Czech Republic, in Canada, in Israel. So yeah, so we're considered international since we tap some outside of the United States.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. That kind of background on the organization really helps set the tone for what's coming next. I think it's really interesting just the breadth of those programs that you operate. It's fantastic. You know, we see really targeted foundations as well, and I think organizations of this nature, you know, a little bit you know, rarer for us to be working with. So it's great to see, and great to see the work that comes through SmartSimple, as you know, in helping to materialize those programs.
Well, you can thank the board members because and our benefactors, since these are their interest areas, right? When they were also alive, and what the board is interested in funding today.
Yeah, super. So moving on, and you know, in looking at AI, I think when we launched back in March of 2023, you were one of the first, if not the very first person to reach out after our launch webinars with with some eagerness to get up and running. So really, from what I'd love to know is what is kind of the motivation at Bader Philanthropies to explore AI and to really adopt it into the workflow.
So there's a story behind that, Greg. And it's so funny because it was like, I don't know if anyone's religious or not, but it was like a calling or something like that. Literally, like my VP, he goes and says, "Hey, I think we should integrate AI into our system. Can you reach out to SmartSimple and ask them if they have the capability to do that?" Next thing I know, I come back to my desk, look at my emails, and there is an email from SmartSimple saying, "Integrate now with AI." I was like, wow, okay. Like either my office is bugged or they're listening in. I don't know, something's going on. But it was the perfect timing because we were ready to do it. He saw the use case already and he was using it. I guess it was brought up to him in one of the classes that he was taking, and he saw the usefulness of it and said he wanted to implement this for the foundation, but also because it was to relieve some of the stress, some of the labor for our grants team initially, right? Because that's where we wanted to start, because we always want to start internally first and test this out before we give it out to our clients, grantees.
Yeah, and SmartSimple actually took the exact same approach. There were a number of us internally that were that had early access to ChatGPT through OpenAI and their beta program. So we were early on looking at the potentials and the capabilities of it. And then when the opportunity to integrate with it, when they launched their API came about, it was a no-brainer for us to jump in. And for those kind of same reasons, you know, right? It's we could see the efficiencies that could be gained by leveraging AI for some of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and some of the tasks I'm sure that, you know, you're going to show us a little bit later on.
Yeah, it was just it was just great timing. And that's, sometimes they say, you gotta be the right place, right time, right circumstances. And this is what you call that fit all three and checked all
Yeah,
three of those
yeah.
boxes.
Perfect timing. Yeah, nearly like we had your office bugged, or like that a convenient social media ad that pops up just after you've been talking about something.
Right? I wasn't even in my office during that time. But
So
so one more thing to Greg is it's that when I reached out to Gary, because he's our sales rep, but I reached out to Gary. Well, actually, I didn't reach out to Gary. It was like that check here now, contact us now. So I did that, and Gary reached back out to me. He says, "Congratulations, you're the first one." So
there you go. Probably day two, if not day one of that page going live. No, in working with you, Kim, I think you were always going to be one of the first that I expected to hear from anyway. And having been involved with you and the organization and seeing, through our releases how you've kind of worked with the tool, and that's what it is at the end of the day, is a tool to help people work. It's been great. It's kind of all of those initial use cases that we kind of expected and tried to promote are the ones that you're running with. And I think like that, we had similar ideas for things, and some of the feedback that you provided on it as well has gone into the ongoing development and improvement of the SmartSimple Cloud Plus AI offering. So I think as we move forward into this, I think we're all aware of some of the challenges and talking points that surrounds AI and the adoption of AI. A lot of initial hesitancies around it as well, both internally, external pressures, a lot of news reporting going on about it. And I think, I'm going to ask you maybe to go into some of those challenges if you faced any at Bader. From SmartSimple's perspective, what we've always tried to do is position this as a tool, right? It's another extension of the SmartSimple Cloud platform that allows clients to, leverage the power of generative AI tools within the platform if they want to do so. If they don't want to do so, that's no problem. Don't have to use the tool if it's not a right fit. There is, of course, all sorts of due diligence that needs to go around, around the choosing of these models, the incorporation of these models, making sure that everybody is aware that they're being used from a transparency perspective. And, we've employed and made a whole load of tools available to assist clients in doing that. But I'm curious to hear from your side, Kim, those kind of discussions that happened internally, were they the same kind of discussions that, I've just mentioned? And how did you overcome them, or how did the organization overcome them?
Yes, so we did initially have some pushback, and it was because of security and legal ramifications of placing AI into our system. But I also think that because it's the unknown, people are scared of the unknown.
That's right.
So I think that the reason why we got through this hurdle is because it's just explaining to them how this whole thing works, right? So the issue that they were finding was that, well, we are tapping into sharing information that we shouldn't out into the World Wide Web, and that we should let people know that we're using it, and that what's going to happen with our information. Is it learning? Is it manipulating it in some kind of way? And I think it's just explaining to our admin team that, this is how it's going to work, giving everything that we could documents wise to our lawyers, having them take a look at it. And, initially, it's scary, but, at the end of the day, when you explain everything, that they finally understand it, then they're like, okay, well, because this is internal and we're not really sharing this to the World Wide Web, the information is deleted after 30 days. It's only through the API key. It's not really learning. We're not tapping into any PII, personal identification information. Then it's okay, right? But of course, this is all internal. Once we do external, there are other steps that we have to take. And when we get there, we'll talk about the next step.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do that as a follow-up webinar next year, I think. But no, they're all very valid points, and it's the same kind of thing that we've heard ourselves from our clients that are using the integrations, and those that have kind of been a little bit, a little bit more hesitant. For sure, unlike yourselves, there's a lot of others that don't want to be first to make that jump, and want to see how it goes, which is again perfectly fine. And I think with all of the buzz that was surrounding ChatGPT and what it can do last year, nobody wanted to rush in either without kind of understanding like that the data retention policies, the models learning from the data, and all of those other kind of things that have gone along with that. I think the big thing from our perspective is, again, it's a control and a transparency thing, because our clients can configure what they want to send to the AI. You can exclude all of that PII. You don't put a first name, last name, date of birth,
Right.
contact phone number, social security number in there, because you're not selecting those variables to pass through. You're just putting in the appropriate pieces of text for the appropriate task that you want the AI to assist with. So it's using the tool, for the appropriate tasks as well, not just putting things through for the sake of it. And I think, the more that adoption of these kind of tools grow, I think the more mainstream they'll become. In reality, AI is being used for years and years and years. Netflix, Facebook, Instagram, they all use it for their recommendations. I think this approach with the generative AI and the large language models has just been a little bit different. And I think the way that you can engage it kind of just maybe put a few people off. But do you think, expanding this to your external users, is that, and maybe I'm jumping a couple of slides ahead here, is that on the horizon for Bader?
Yes, and there are some things that we probably want to tackle first, is because we are international funding. We probably want to do some type of translation for our international grantees, considering that's their first language, and it's probably easy for them to write a proposal in their first language, then translate it somehow, and then put it into our system. I know that SmartSimple does have the work with AI Plus in the system, but of course we haven't configured that in order to make it visible to our grantees. And once we do, of course, we'll have to do some training first, and then also some transparency disclaimers on using AI.
Yeah, for sure. And as I mentioned, we've brought in a whole host of additional options and tools like that, the work with Plus AI, but even simpler things like a toggle that can be applied to a field to flag that the content in there was created by AI, or there's AI involved in some way in the content of that field. Again, just from a transparency perspective, I think is key. So if we're okay now, Kim, I'm going to move to my next slide and very quickly stop sharing, and I'll hand the controls over to you. And if you would be so kind to take us through some of the things that you've seen Plus AI be particularly useful for.
Sure.
Yeah, over to you. Perfect. We have your screen.
Awesome. Okay, so I am in a test application right now, and one of the features that we use is to update our hashtags. So what we do is that once the proposal is submitted and then we accept the proposal. Oh, sorry. It goes into internal review, and then it takes a little time and it generates hashtags for us.
That's fantastic. So it's doing all of your initial coding And how have you found that, like, how accurate are these? Are they kind of the tags that you were expecting? Are they things that you were using previously?
So this here is taking the project description and creating 5 hashtags for it because that's what we asked it to do.
Right.
And for the most part, it does okay, but of course, you know, you always have to have an eye on these.
Yep.
And our grants directors, if they feel that it's not appropriate with the description, they of course can change it because we make it available for them to edit. And like we say always, you should not always trust the AI. You should always have an eye on it and make sure it's correct for you and correct for the application.
And that's the same messaging that we've gone with. And even when we use it internally, you know, if we're drafting communications or something like that, yes, we might start with a copy paste, but you're never hitting send on that, right? You always have to review and make sure that what the AI has suggested makes sense for the scenario that it's being used in. And I think this is key. That's the key message across the board, whether it be hashtag summaries or even initial reviews of things, you know, having some element of oversight on that is key.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And then we use it also for our recommendations. Now, this is the recommendation either for approval or denial. When there is, of course, a recommendation for approval, and they submit it for prelim recommendation, they meaning the grants directors, it generates a short write-up for them.
Fantastic.
And this here is the description coming from the full proposal, which is also that the hashtags are coming from too.
Okay.
And so we leave this here so that the grants directors can see what was originally written by the grantee. And so then to make sure that the write-up, the short version where the AI generates, is also relevant to the short description.
Super. Yeah. And that when we were talking about the initial use cases, that was, I think, one of the key ones that everybody kind of saw straight away as one of the real wins, and just being able to summarize, you know, big applications, or even in your case, short descriptions, but being able to summarize it in a way that makes it more usable for other things. That's super.
Yeah. And so we had about 155 fall recommendations going to our board. And out of 155, guess how many times the grants director edited this write-up portion?
How many?
0.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible. So that's like, you know, one of my following slides, we'll talk about the wins or the takeaways, but that's a massive one, right? I'm sure that's a considerable time saving for them in having to draft these things. And the fact that it's accurate enough for that is incredible.
Yeah, and initially they would have to read the short description from the full proposal, summarize it in 100 words. It's a lot harder than it sounds to summarize it in 100 words. And so now we're actually training them to be editors instead of writers, which takes a little less time to do.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I'm also then going to show how easy it is to configure the write-up and also the hashtags. So this is in the workflow, just a regular workflow on the back end under tasks. And we have this AI write-up, update write-up field, 100 words or less. And really what it is this very easy prompt, which is this AI, OpenAI, which calls the AI. And then this is the prompt to summarize this text in less than 100 words and do not mention dollar amounts. And we are just calling the organization, the title, and the project description in the full proposal.
Fantastic. So that's, you know, a couple of minutes to get something like that up and running. And I think it's clever enough there as well to exclude the dollar amounts, right? Giving specific directions to the AI, so it understands the context a little bit more. and then leveraging the variable processor as well, which is the secret sauce of SmartSimple and being able to call the values from the parent record or other fields in other areas. And then one other thing I just wanted to call out there, you have the AI prompt or the AI tag at the start of that value. And you're calling OpenAI because that's the service that you're using. You're calling the ChatGPT model because that's the model that you want to use. And then the number one is the temperature of the result, which basically is the randomness that you're allowing the AI to use in the response. So 1 being very low randomness, 9 being very high randomness. The integration and the SmartSimple Cloud plus AI integration was designed with other AI providers and models in mind. It just happened that OpenAI was first to market. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but the same structure works if you're using OpenAI on Azure or others. So I can come back to that at a later stage. But I think that's super again. It's probably a similar approach for your hashtags. Just a simple update custom fields, asking for hashtags. And that's something that any administrator that's on the call here today would easily be able to achieve.
Very true.
Is there anything else? That's it for now, Kim. I think that's a great little sneak peek at, delighted to be able to see that in a live client environment as well. So I'll share my screen again and we'll go through my last couple of slides. I promise I don't have too many left. So you showed us the demo, and you talked about the number of records that needed to be reviewed by the director. Can you take us through those kind of benefits in a little bit more detail? Were there any other specific efficiencies or metrics or time savings that you were able to achieve in using these tools?
Yeah, so pretty much the write-up field that was just shown where the AI generates the text, that usually takes the grants director the longest to fill out. And one of our superstar grant directors, she gives herself 2 weeks to do all of her recommendations. And she just works. She's like a train. She just like steamrolls right through it, which is awesome. So she's a very, very special use case because, the way that she works, and that it helped her so much. Within those 2 weeks, she said that the first time she used it, it saved her about 5 days of work.
Wow.
And then the second time around that she used it, it saved her a full week, so 7 days, down from 14 days. So that's amazing news to us, and it's amazing to her because she has 2 grants areas that she's overseeing, and it just gives her more time to spend with her grantees. So that is great on our end to save even like 30 minutes, an hour of time for anyone. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible return. I mean, and I think that's again a key thing to note is that it's time retrieved essentially from the effort that these kind of things would have taken in the past for, not necessarily mundane tasks, but tasks that just had to be done in a particular way and needed that level of hands-on involvement. Now that necessarily isn't required anymore. To the same extent, it gives that director 7 days of their time back to work with the grantees, to formulate the programs, to do all of that other work that she's probably not able to commit as much time to. That's fantastic. And I suppose when that works for one grant director, I think it's an easier sell then to the others that are on staff and colleagues that may have been a little bit more hesitant as well, right?
Right. But I mean, as I mentioned before, looking at all the 155 recommendations going to the board, and this is like the whole portfolio, right, of our fall board meeting, and our fall board meeting is usually the largest. So to see that all the grants directors did not even touch, edit any of those fields was like, wow, okay. So they're happy with it, and I'm happy with it that they're happy with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. No news is good news, right? No modifications to that that's the ideal. That's the ideal result. The
Right.
fact that there was no additional interaction there than required. No, that's fantastic. Is there anything else there that you wanted to share in that regard?
Um, there are other things that, we're trying to help, of course, because there's a grant side of
Mhm.
like recommendations, and then of course there's also an operations side. And we are trying to tweak it so that it works for our operations side
Right,
to make sure the prompt is calling things correctly, making sure that it's writing the way that they're satisfied with it.
right.
So it's not just our grants team, but it's also on our admin operations side that we want to take care of too.
Super. And I think that transitions us nicely to the next slide. Before we kind of move to questions. Yeah, it takes time to get the prompts right. We found that
Mhm.
ourselves internally. There's a lot of trial and error, especially if you're getting kind of a little bit more detailed in things.
Mhm.
The summary ones are usually pretty straightforward because you can be really explicit. Less than 100 words, exclude the dollar amount. Nice and easy. But like that from an operational standpoint, if there's a little bit more involved, it's probably a lot of back and forth and tweaking of those prompts that's required. Are there any other kind of lessons learned from your side in the entire journey or across the adoption right through to where you are today that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think one of the lessons learned is to probably sit back and kind of zoom out a little bit to to see who this all affects,
Hmm.
all the stakeholders, and make sure that they are with you along the journey instead of fighting with you. You will have probably more success if they are on your side before you kind of implement certain these things. And I think it's not just this either. It's everything in life where you want to make sure that people are understanding what your concepts are, so then they can help you through it as well. So like you're working as a team and not just you're by yourself.
Yeah, that rings very true, in wider life in general, as I fight with my daughter to brush her teeth in the morning and put her jacket on to take her head to daycare. I don't think there's any negotiating or bringing her onto my side just yet. But no, you're dead right. I think we were always very clear on that internally in SmartSimple in giving everybody an opportunity to use the tools first and kind of decide how they want to use them. We've projects internally to kind of expand on the leverage and create knowledge bases and stuff like that. But it's a full team approach. We're not, leaving anybody outside or, not listening to the feedback that they have. And I think if you try and force something like this on somebody or like to the other side, completely ignore it, that's when you're gonna, run into some hurdles that may be a little bit more challenging to get over. I know, I think the fact that these tools are so widely and easily available now, you kind of have to assume they're being used in some way, shape, or form anywhere that there's text involved. So why not bring it into SmartSimple, give people the tools and give them access to the tools and just be transparent that they're okay to be used within the boundaries and the confines that's appropriate, right?
Right. And I think that's smart on Smart Simple's side because you see now every single platform embedding AI into its functionality. Grammarly is doing it, right? What is the Edge is doing it? Zoom is doing it with the AI summary, and I mean that's either you fight against it or you work with it, right? And usually you find more success with working with it.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
yeah.
Um, so one last question for you, Kim, before I kind of open the floor. We talked briefly about rolling this out to grantees and your external users. Is there anything else, from I don't want to say long term because who knows how like this stuff is moving so quickly, but what's next for Bader Philanthropies and using AI? Is there anything that, immediate that you're looking at? And maybe from your perspective, what would you like to see from the platform, in things that we're doing? Any thoughts or suggestions in that regard?
So AI is always in the back of our heads, right, in our department, but there are, of course, other things that are creeping up to the top of the list. But I do want to see, and I've shared this with you too before, is to be able to upload, let's say, a written text document, because I know our grants directors, some of them are older and they like to write. I mean, it's the traditional way, right, is to write. And so it'd be awesome to have an upload button to take that text and then populate a field in the system, or to take a picture of, let's say, a budget that is in Hebrew, and that will translate into a certain field for us. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, hoping that is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. All I'll say there, Kim, is keep an eye on your email inbox. As part of our Q1 campaign, there'll be a little bit more detail to follow around that kind of stuff. Absolutely, that kind of parsing of text, interpretation, all of that kind of stuff is on the way for sure.
That's amazing if that could happen.
So let's leave it at that, Kim. Thanks very much for your time. I see we've a couple of questions come in. So we'll welcome Cleana back and better ask away.
Perfect. Thank you so much, folks. That was really good. And one of the first questions, kind of discussion, I suppose someone put in there, was they really liked the discussion approach to this webinar. So I have to agree. I think it was great to have that dynamic between both of you to kind of go through and answer questions that way. So thank you so much. Okay, so for hashtags, is it checking for keywords, or is it using an existing hashtag list?
It is currently not using the hashtag list that's in the system. It's just pulling keywords that are in the project description, and it's limited to 5 because that's what the prompt is asking it to do. I did ask, though, if it could reference the hashtag library, but that would also mean that these hashtags would be in existence in the hashtag library to pull. And sometimes maybe you might not have a hashtag in there that summarizes or that fits the description of the project.
That's a good point, and it's something that I've actually taken back, and we are working on making the hashtag library referenceable as a variable or some other way. You can also leverage the system variables, right? So you could build out a list of approved hashtags in the system variable list and add them in, or reference those. So you could say, hey, give me 5 hashtags from this list of 50 that's in the system variable that's stored. But you're dead right again. You're assuming then that all the hashtags exist, and if there's any new ones or maybe some that are a better fit, you would have to go back and add those into the hashtag library. Yeah, that's fair.
Kim, is it your team who writes the questions into the code for the AI?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a key point. All Kim showed was the workflow, tradition, just like any other workflow, and it was an update custom field task. And you select the field that you want to update, and then in the value box, you put the AI prompt, that AI code snippet that Kim showed. And that's all it is. It's as straightforward as we can make it. And the documentation on the wiki is up to date for that, as it's all net new. Mark and the wider team put a huge amount of work into getting all of that documentation created. So it is live on the wiki right now. Perfect.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that the hardest thing with you working with the AI is writing the prompts, because one word can change it like drastically. So, find the prompt that works for you.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you used AI to understand impacts from reporting?
We have not yet, and that's also in the back of my head. So the issue now with our reporting metrics is that the header and the actual text is kind of disconnected. So the text won't know what it's referencing per se because it's not talking to the same field. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like there's the header and then there's the field box text, which needs the header in order to know what that content is referencing
So
to.
you're using two different fields, Kim, are you? One
Right.
display a caption and instructions per se, and then you have a second field to actually capture the content of that question.
Correct. But I'm thinking about this and seeing if I can merge the two fields into a one text box type of thing. And then pulling that information out to kind of then taking all of that and aggregating in the impacts of the reporting with our metrics.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one of the things that we've trialed in our own demo environments is by using a goals UTA or basically an impact or an outcomes assessment UTA, where you can do a roll-up of values from all of the associated grants into that. You can then point the AI to the analysis in that specific record. So that works right now. So let's say you've an arts program, you want to pull in the progress reports from all of that arts programs and give it a summary of it. You can do that kind of stuff now by creating one massive text field and pointing the AI to it. But what I will say is bear with us in that regard. Keep an eye on your emails as well. Not for Q1, but for Q2 of this year, specifically around reporting and outcomes.
For the application in your instance of generating hashtags, are the hashtags generated against each record ever exposed externally as part of a campaign, or are the hashtags just within your organization?
The hashtags are only used or internal use only. Yeah. So we haven't done any external references to our grantees whatsoever.
But not to say that they couldn't, right? You could.
Correct.
If appropriate, you can expose that text field and allow people to add their hashtags or use the work with AI feature to suggest hashtags for them. All of those kind of things. Those kind of features and functions are part of the base platform offering.
Well, I do have to say, like, I forgot to make it just visible for internal use only. And people were putting in, like, grantees are putting in hashtags in it. Like, oh, they would use it. So it was a happy accident.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Can you elaborate on the measures Bader is taken to ensure the ethical use of AI, particularly regarding the transparency and accountability of the large language models employed?
Well, we have, for internally, we have told our operations team and our grants team which fields are generated via AI. I'm also going to go one step because I know SmartSimple has a little toggle that says to identify which fields are AI generated. So I'm going to actually do that as well. But as I mentioned before, we haven't done this externally yet. So once we do it externally, we're thinking of how we can put disclaimers on how we can communicate the use of AI to our grantees. Maybe it's on the login page. Maybe it's part of our the security policies that's on the system too, just to make sure all of our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed. So we haven't gotten there yet, but we are definitely will be able to do something in the future.
Yeah, but I think that's a fair approach, Kim. At the end of the day, these models are all provided by third parties for the most part, unless you're bringing your own, right? So you need to review the documentation, and organizations that are using these models need to do their due diligence around the models being employed, which your organization has already done when looking at the terms and conditions and the policies and such. So that's the key thing, right? Once your organization and once your teams have reviewed those policies and you're happy with them and your organization is comfortable, That's the safeguard that's in place there. And like that, the second part is the transparency and the awareness. Now, from the platform perspective, you can, of course, bring your own model, right? So if you really wanted to create your own large language model, the SmartSimple integration can be incorporated there, and then you full control over that model. But every client is going to be different, and it's up to each individual to review those terms and conditions, and make sure that everybody is happy with that.
Great. Just a few more folks here, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Okay, so reuse of AI for outcome analysis. What does that align with your work at the Impact Gnome? I understand Impact Gnome was more about standardization and structuring outcomes data around their catalog taxonomy, but AI is able to take advantage of rich unstructured data.
I love the Impact Gnome, Clean. I think he's going to be a new mascot for us. It's the Impact Genome. Sorry. But I think we'll have to have a little mascot now, the Impact Gnome. No. Yeah, so that work is independent of each other, but it lends itself well in both cases. So some of the newer features within SmartSimple Plus AI include the ability to leverage NER, and I can't for the life of me think of what NER is. Named entity recognition. Sorry. Named entity recognition basically allows us to parse through large bodies of unstructured text and structure it. So it can interpret that text and apply codings, taxonomies, and such in that area. But the two projects are independent.
And I'll finish with this question, folks. I suppose this is kind of for both of you. Given the growing concerns around data privacy and security, how does the SmartSimple Cloud Plus AI platform address these issues, particularly when handling sensitive information?
Yeah, do you want me to go take that one, Kim? I think it's up to each client, firstly, to opt in and to decide whether or not to use any AI provider or any AI large language model for any particular purpose, right? So that's step one. Step two then is selecting the variables that you want to pass through. So if you don't put any variables in there, you're not going to pass anything through to any AI model. You could just put natural English text. So again, you have full control over what's going in there. You can also define templates and structures that force users to just be able to put in to the AI what you've defined. So you don't have a case, well, unless you open up a big text box, somebody puts their social insurance number in there and then sends that out to the AI. But there's always going to be scenarios like that are complete and utter exceptions where the issue is between the keyboard and the chair, right? So from our side, we are making everything is opt-in, everything is under client control. The model's being used under client control. Licenses are provided by each individual client, so it's their own API licenses. There's nothing shared, and there's a whole load of other protections at play when you're using those your own APIs. Nothing is used for modeling from a third-party side as of right now, and as of their privacy policies with OpenAI right now, nothing is being used for modeling. Again, we have our transparency elements, including new style sheets that can be applied to individual fields, instructional text that can be applied wherever you want it to be applied, again, making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on. But really, at the end of the day, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to.
Sure. Yeah, for us, we only have we only reference the fields in the request. We don't put in fields on the organization or fields on their ACH information, banking information. So like Greg says, we are able to choose which fields we want to reference and to use in the system. So it's not actually taking everything from the organization, everything on the contact field and everything on the request all at once to put it through a field to generate something. So that in itself, it's kind of up to you. What do you want to do? But then even if you want to use it for internal purposes, that would not, for me, I guess, I don't know that much about it, but like if I was to use banking information to say internally, it would not be used externally. So it'll kind of be okay on our end. But I don't have any use case scenarios to do anything with their banking information. So
yeah, I think case by case is the way to handle these things, right? So yes, you look at the policies, you do your initial due diligence, but then from then on, right, you're looking at what you're actually going to be using the tool for. You know, we saw 3 use cases from you today, Kim, where it's summarizing text and hashtags. You know, the risk of anything going anywhere else there is very, very low. And I think the content that you're passing through the AI is perfectly fine. So, you know, that's the thing. Everybody has to make their own decision. Kalina, there's one last question that I just saw. Oh, I think Kim is actually typing an answer in.
oh, I'll just answer it.
Yeah. So if the summary is generated by AI and then amended, does it still say generated by AI?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So that style is applied to the field where the text is generated into. So it stays with that particular field.
Thanks, folks. You probably saw all of the great compliments as well. They're coming in the chat box as well. So an amazing session, folks. Thank you so much. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar probably tomorrow. So I do appreciate you attending, those that can attend. So stay tuned from that email from me. I know Greg has just a final few slides. Kim, I do appreciate your time here today as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kalina.
Thank
So
you, Harry.
one quick plug from our side. Our annual conference is taking place in Amsterdam at the end of May this year. The early bird tickets are now available at smartsimple.com/events. You can also reach out to Kalina and Sinead at events@smartsimple.com if you have any questions, or if anybody would like to present, similar to how Kim so kindly volunteered to present today. We do have an open call for presentations for Unite. So you can, we do have a survey, but you can also just email events@smartsimple.com if you wish. And finally, massive thanks to Kim for joining me today, for taking time out of her morning and running through what her team at Bader Philanthropies is doing with SmartSimple Cloud plus AI. So thank you very much, Kim. Thanks to Kalina and Sinead for arranging all of the logistics around this. And finally, if anybody on the call has any additional questions or would like to find out more about SmartSimple Cloud plus AI, you can reach out to the team at platformsolutions@smartsimple.com. And we'll leave it at that. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
Bye, folks.
Bye.